At 7 a.m. my unemployed sister showed up at the apartment I rent from my parents and announced, "I'll live here now." Moments later, Mom told me they were doubling my rent to cover their expenses. When I said I'd move out, they laughed in my face, so I emptied the place and took every piece of furniture with me. Imagine pouring your entire life, every last drop of your hard-earned savings and dreams, into building a future you could be proud of. Then, one shattering morning, watching it all crumble, not because of some outside force, but because the very people who were supposed to protect you betrayed you. My name is Allison and I'm 28 years old. Not long ago, I honestly thought I had it all figured out. I had this great job as a social media marketer, and my apartment? It was a sweet deal, rented from my parents at a reasonable price. Every single penny I saved, every hour I worked, was another brick in the foundation of my future. My very own home. I was building something. Then bim. One Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. my unemployed sister, Stephanie, showed up at my door. Suitcases, duffel bags, the whole 9 yards. Before I could even process the shock, my phone rang. It was my mom, cheerfully informing me that Stephanie was moving in. Oh, and by the way, they were doubling my rent. Just like that, my perfectly constructed world, the one I poured my heart and soul into, began to collapse before my very eyes. Before all of that, before everything went sideways, I had a life I was genuinely proud of. I was a social media marketer at Digital Pulse, a buzzing agency downtown. I'd worked my butt off to carve out a comfortable niche for myself there. Our office? Super sleek, all glass and collaborative spaces, with a break room that had everything from espresso to kombucha. My desk had this incredible view of the city, and every morning, it gave me this rush of inspiration and accomplishment. My salary was solid. I covered my expenses, and religiously, I saved 20% every single month for my future home. I'd been with the company for 4 years, and they just put me in charge of our biggest client, a national fitness chain. My boss even hinted that a promotion was practically guaranteed if that campaign crushed it, which would mean a sweet 15% bump in salary. Life was good. Better than good, it was on track. And my apartment? Oh, that place was my sanctuary. A peaceful one-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood, just far enough from downtown to feel like an escape, but close enough for an easy commute. When my parents bought the building 5 years ago as an investment, they offered me a unit at below market rate. At the time, it felt like such a blessing. I poured my heart, my time, my everything into making that space truly mine. My living room had this plush sectional sofa I'd finally paid off after 6 months of budgeting. A coffee table I found at an estate sale and lovingly refinished. Bookshelves overflowing with psychology books, marketing texts, and vinyl records from college. My kitchen was tiny, but I'd filled it with quality appliances that made cooking a joy. That Vitamix? A first bonus splurge. The espresso machine? My birthday gift to myself last year. My bedroom was my ultimate haven. A memory foam mattress worth every single penny, sheets so soft they'd make hotel owners jealous, and a reading nook by the window, perfect for rainy Sunday mornings with a good book. Every single item in that apartment had a story. It represented years of careful selection, hard work, and meticulous financial planning. My long-term goals were crystal clear and right on track. With my consistent savings and that looming promotion, I was looking at a down payment for my own place within 3 years. I was even browsing real estate listings, not seriously shopping but dreaming, planning, mapping out my future. My family dynamic, though? Always complicated, especially with my sister, Stephanie, who's 3 years younger. She was always the golden child, the favorite, the one who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. I worked my tail off through college, stacking up part-time jobs, graduating with minimal debt. Stephanie? Expensive private university, changed majors 3 times, tuition fully covered by mom and dad. That pattern just continued into adulthood. Stephanie needed a car? They bought her one. I needed a car? I got a loan. Stephanie lost her job? Moved back home rent-free. Me? When I faced a layoff early in my career, I was offered a loan from my parents, complete with interest. Don't get me wrong, I love my family, but I'd long ago accepted that there were just different rules for us. I'd made my peace with it by building my own fiercely independent life, a life where I didn't need their support or, frankly, their approval. The apartment deal, the one that felt like a blessing, it was one of the few times I felt like I benefited from being family, while still holding on to my independence. A rare win. Looking back, the warning signs were definitely there. Tiny cracks appearing in my carefully constructed equilibrium. 2 weeks earlier, Stephanie had texted me out of the blue, asking how I was doing. That was unusual. We usually only talked at family gatherings. Then my mom called, casually dropping that Stephanie and her boyfriend had broken up, and she'd subsequently quit her job at the boutique she'd worked at for 8 months. I remember feeling this uneasy twinge when Mom said, "Your sister is going through such a difficult time right now. Family needs to stick together during hardships." I nodded sympathetically on the phone, totally clueless that those words were a dark foreshadowing of what was about to hit me. The night before everything changed, I was lying in bed, scrolling Pinterest, dreaming up kitchen backsplash ideas for the summer. I had no idea that in less than 24 hours, my meticulously planned life, my peace, everything, would be utterly shattered by a single knock at the door. The knocking started precisely at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday. I know because my alarm was set for 7:30, and the insistent pounding dragged me out of a deep sleep. 30 minutes early. Disoriented, half asleep, I stumbled to the door in my pajamas, hair going in every direction. I expected a package delivery, maybe a maintenance emergency. But when I swung the door open, there she was, Stephanie. 2 massive suitcases, a duffel bag, and her designer purse. Her usually perfect hair was a messy ponytail, her eyes puffy from crying or maybe no sleep at all. "Hey sis," she chirped, a forced cheerfulness that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Surprise. I'll be staying with you for a while." I stood frozen. My brain just couldn't process it. "Stephanie, what are you talking about? What are you doing here so early?" She didn't answer. She just pushed past me, rolling her luggage right into my living room. "Mark and I broke up. He cheated on me with his coworker, can you believe it? 2 years. And then my boss at the boutique was totally unreasonable about me needing time off to process everything, so I had to quit. I just can't deal with toxic work environments on top of heartbreak." I slowly closed the door, my mind reeling. "Steph, I'm so sorry about Mark and your job, that's really tough. But this is a 1-bedroom apartment. There's no space for you. Why didn't you go to Mom and Dad's?" Stephanie dramatically flopped onto my sectional. "Their house is being renovated, remember? The guest room's a complete wreck. Plus, Dad snores so loudly now, and Mom's on this kale and quinoa health kick. I'd go absolutely crazy there." She looked around my apartment, a smile creeping onto her face. "This place is perfect. You've always had great taste, Ally." I winced. Ally? A childhood nickname I'd outgrown years ago. "Stephanie, I work from home 2 days a week. I need my space. This just won't work." Just then my phone rang. My mom's name flashed across the screen. A cold, sinking feeling settled in my stomach. I answered. "Allison, your sister's there, right?" Mom didn't even wait for me to confirm. "I want you to make her feel welcome. She's going through a very difficult time, and she needs family support right now." "Mom, I get that she's having a hard time," I tried to reason, "but my apartment is too small for 2 people. Maybe we could help her find her own place? Or she could stay with Jessica," I suggested, mentioning Stephanie's friend with a 2-bedroom. "Jessica isn't family," my mother replied, her voice sharp. "Family takes care of each other. Allison, your sister needs you. This is not the time to be selfish." I took a deep breath, stepping into the kitchen so Stephanie wouldn't overhear. "It's not about being selfish, Mom. There's literally no space here. I don't have an extra bedroom. She can sleep on the couch. It's temporary until she gets back on her feet." The tone in my mother's voice made it crystal clear. This wasn't a suggestion, it was an order. An expectation. "How temporary are we talking about?" I asked, watching Stephanie unpack her toiletries and arrange them on my coffee table. "As long as she needs," Mom replied vaguely. "Now stop being difficult. I raised you better than this. Do I need to get your father involved?" The threat hung heavy in the air. I knew the drill. My father would be even harder, brandishing words like ungrateful and selfish. I played this script enough times to know how it ended. "Fine," I conceded, defeat weighing heavy in my voice. "She can stay for now, but we have to figure out a more permanent solution soon." "That's my good girl," Mom said, her voice instantly warm again. Call me if you need anything. Love you both. The call ended. I stood in my kitchen watching Stephanie make herself completely at home, rearranging my throw pillows, placing her framed photos next to mine on the bookshelf. A wave of pure invasion washed over me, but I swallowed it down. I forced a neutral tone. The couch pulls out into a bed. We'll need to put it back during the day so I can work. I have meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays from home. Stephanie barely looked up. Actually, I was thinking I would take the bedroom. The living room gets so much light in the morning, and you know I'm not a morning person. Plus, I have all these clothes that need to be hung up. I stared at her. Disbelief surged. Stephanie, this is my apartment. I am not giving up my bedroom. She fixed me with that look, the one she perfected on our parents for years. A perfect blend of hurt and indignation. Wow, ally. I just lost my boyfriend and my job. I'm at my lowest point, and you can't even make a small sacrifice to help me? The living room is bigger anyway. I held my ground. You can have the couch. That's already a compromise. The standoff might have continued, but my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Be kind to your sister. Remember all the time she was there for you. I honestly couldn't recall those supposed instances, but I knew deep down this battle wasn't worth fighting. Not today. Fine, I said through gritted teeth. You can use the living room, but we need to establish some ground rules. Stephanie's face instantly brightened. You're the best sister ever. This is going to be so fun. Like when we were kids and shared a room. I didn't have the heart to remind her those days were far from idyllic, with her constantly borrowing my things without asking and running to mom and dad whenever I tried to set a boundary. As she cheerfully continued unpacking, claiming more and more of my space, I texted my friend Laura. Steph just moved in. No warning. No choice. Send wine and patience. Laura's response was immediate. Oh no. Nightmare flashbacks to college roommate days. Coming over tonight with emergency supplies. Hang in there. Looking at my sister, humming to herself, completely oblivious, I wondered. How long could I actually hang in there before something had to give? The first week with Stephanie was every bit the nightmare I'd feared. While I stuck to my routine, up at 7 a.m., working by 8:30, Stephanie slept in, usually until noon. That wouldn't have been so bad. Except her presence had transformed my once peaceful living room into this chaotic bedroom/fashion boutique/makeup studio. One Wednesday, during a crucial client video call, I had to contort my laptop camera, desperately trying to crop out the blanket draped over the sofa, the makeup exploding on my coffee table, the clothes hanging from every doorknob and chair. When my boss actually commented on my unusual background, I mumbled something about redecorating, promising myself I would address it with Stephanie that evening. But addressing anything with my sister? Virtually impossible. I suggested she look for a job, and she'd sigh dramatically, declaring she was taking time to heal. I asked her to clean up and she'd promise, then somehow never get around to it. I gently mentioned the skyrocketing grocery bill, and she'd remind me she was going through trauma and needed comfort food. By the end of that first week, I noticed my carefully stocked fridge had been thoroughly raided. My meal prep containers, precisely portioned for work lunches, were mysteriously empty. The expensive specialty coffee beans I treated myself to once a month? Nearly gone. Even my secret stash of dark chocolate had been discovered and depleted. It was infuriating. One evening I found Stephanie wrapped in my favorite throw blanket, watching reality TV at full volume. Stephanie, I said, trying to keep my voice even, we need to talk about some house rules. She looked up, clearly annoyed I'd interrupted her show. Can it wait until commercial break? No, it can't. I snapped, my patience wearing thin. I've been trying to talk to you all week. I sat down across from her, pulling out a notepad where I'd carefully written some basic guidelines. First, quiet hours for when I'm working or sleeping. Second, shared expenses, groceries and utilities have gone up since you arrived. Third, personal space and belongings. Stephanie actually rolled her eyes. Are you seriously giving me a roommate contract? I'm your sister, not some random off Craigslist. That's exactly why we need clear boundaries, I explained, fighting to keep my voice level. Because we're sisters, things get complicated if we don't communicate clearly. She laughed. Actually laughed. Then turned back to her show. You've always been so uptight, ally. Just relax. This isn't forever. How long is it then? I pressed, a cold knot forming in my stomach. Have you started looking for jobs or apartments? She sighed heavily. Can you stop pressuring me? I told you I'm taking time to process my breakup. Besides, Mom and Dad said I could stay here as long as I need to. That was the moment. Something clicked. Wait, what exactly did Mom and Dad tell you about staying here? Stephanie shrugged, not meeting my eyes. Just that you had plenty of space and could use the company, and since they own the building, it's basically like staying with family anyway. My blood began to boil. Without another word, I walked out onto my small balcony and called my parents. My father answered on the fourth ring. Dad? I asked, trying to control the tremor in my voice. Did you and Mom tell Stephanie she could move in with me indefinitely without even asking me first? A pause. A loaded silence. Then he said, Allison, your sister is going through a difficult time. The apartment is plenty big enough for both of you temporarily. But it's not temporary, is it? I shot back, frustration bubbling over. She has no plans to look for a job or her own place, and she's not contributing anything. My father's tone hardened. Your mother and I give you a significant discount on rent for that apartment. Many people would be grateful for such an arrangement. The implicit message was chillingly clear. This apartment wasn't mine. It was a family asset they could reallocate as they saw fit, regardless of the years I'd paid rent, regardless of the life I'd built there. I am grateful, I said carefully, but I also need to be able to live my life. Stephanie isn't respecting my space or my things. You've always been the responsible one, Allison, my father said, his voice softening into that manipulative tone I knew so well. Stephanie needs that stability right now. Just give her some time to get back on her feet. Be the big sister. By the time I hung up, my frustration had curdled into a bitter resignation. It was the same old song and dance from our childhood. Stephanie's needs always taking precedence over mine. Over the next few weeks, the situation didn't just deteriorate, it plummeted. Stephanie invited friends over without warning, sometimes while I was on critical work calls. She'd borrow my clothes without asking and return them stained or stretched. My water bill doubled because she was taking 40-minute showers twice a day. Electricity bills spiked from her endless use of styling tools and electronics. My peaceful morning routine? Shattered, navigating around her strewn belongings. My evening relaxation? Impossible, thanks to her friends' loud laughter or her late-night phone conversations. My weekend plans? Constantly derailed by her sudden emotional crises that demanded my attention. The impact on my work was undeniable. I missed a deadline, a first in my career. My boss, Diane, called me into a one-on-one, genuinely concerned about my sudden performance drop. Those promotion prospects? They were slipping through my fingers like sand. Is everything okay at home, Allison? Diane asked, her gaze piercing. I almost lied but decided on a simplified truth. Family issues. My sister's staying with me temporarily, and it's been an adjustment. Diane nodded sympathetically. Family can be complicated. Just don't let it affect your work for too long. The Henderson account is too important. That evening, I found myself staying late at the office, dreading the thought of returning home. It had become a pattern, finding any excuse to be anywhere but my own apartment. I canceled plans with friends, embarrassed by the chaos and utterly exhausted from the constant tension. One night, I found Stephanie had used my expensive face serum and emptied the entire bottle. That was it. I broke down, sobbing in my bathroom, calling Laura, who had become my absolute lifeline. I can't do this anymore, I wailed. It's like I'm a guest in my own home. My parents won't listen, Stephanie won't change. I feel utterly trapped. Have you considered looking for another apartment? Laura suggested gently. On such short notice? And at current market rates? I scoffed. My parents charge me 30% below market for this place. I can't afford anything comparable on my own. Maybe not comparable, Laura acknowledged, but something that's yours where you make the rules. Is your sanity worth the price difference? As I looked around my once peaceful sanctuary, now completely overtaken by Stephanie, a chilling truth began to sink in. Laura might be right, but before I could even seriously consider that option, things were about to take an even more dramatic turn. Exactly 1 month after Stephanie moved in, my father called me at work. His tone was unusually formal, almost chillingly businesslike. "Allison, your mother, and I would like to have a family discussion this evening. It's important that both you and Stephanie are present. We'll come by around 7 p.m. A cold dread settled in my stomach. "What is this about, Dad?" I asked, my voice tight. "We'll discuss everything tonight," he replied cryptically, and then hung up. I spent the rest of the workday completely distracted, my mind racing through every possible scenario. Were they finally taking Stephanie back? Had they found her an apartment? Or was it something else, something worse? When I got home, Stephanie had actually tidied up the apartment, a first since her arrival. She was unusually quiet, constantly checking her phone. "Do you know what this meeting is about?" I asked, suspicion growing cold. She shrugged, avoiding my eyes. "Not really. Dad just said they wanted to talk to us both." At precisely 7 p.m. my parents arrived. Mom brought a casserole, as if this were a normal family dinner. Dad carried a manila folder, which immediately set off blaring alarm bells in my head. We sat around my small dining table, the one I'd found at a flea market and lovingly restored. My mother served the casserole while my father cleared his throat and opened the folder. "Allison, as you know, your sister has been staying with you for the past month. Given that the living arrangement appears to be working out, we need to make some adjustments to your rental agreement." I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. "What kind of adjustments?" My father slid a paper across the table. "We will need to increase your rent, starting next month. The new amount will be double what you are currently paying." I nearly choked. "Double? Why would you double my rent?" "Well," my mother chimed in, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world, "there are 2 people living in the apartment now. That means twice the utilities, twice the wear and tear on the property." "But Stephanie isn't paying anything," I pointed out, my voice rising despite my desperate effort to stay calm. "She doesn't have a job." "Which is exactly why we need to adjust your rent," my father explained with that patient, condescending tone he used when he thought I was being obtuse. "We need to cover the additional expenses Stephanie incurs while she's getting back on her feet." I looked at Stephanie. She was studying her plate intently, a small, knowing smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She had known. Of course she had known. "Let me get this straight," I said slowly, each word deliberate. "You want me to pay double rent to cover Stephanie living here? Even though I didn't invite her, even though I didn't have space for her, and I'm already dealing with increased costs and total disruption to my life." "Now, Allison," my mother said, her voice taking on that familiar warning tone from childhood. "Stephanie is family. Families support each other during difficult times. Then why is the support always one-directional?" I demanded, the dam beginning to crack. "Why am I always the one expected to give while Stephanie only takes?" My father frowned. "That's unfair, Allison. Your sister has had some bad luck recently." "Bad luck or bad choices?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. The table fell silent. Stephanie's eyes welled with tears on cue, a talent she had perfected over the years. "I can't believe you would say something so cruel," my mother scolded. "After everything we've done for you, giving you this beautiful apartment at below market rent for years. I've paid rent faithfully every month," I countered. "I've maintained the apartment, improved it. This was a business arrangement that benefited both parties. And now the arrangement is changing," my father said firmly. "The new rent will be effective from the 1st of next month. That gives you 2 weeks to adjust your budget." I looked down at the paper. The new amount would eat up nearly 70% of my monthly income after taxes. It would destroy my savings plan. It would make my current lifestyle utterly impossible. "I can't afford this," I said simply. "Not on my current salary." "Then perhaps you should look for a better paying job," my father suggested. "Or take on some freelance work. You're always talking about those side hustles people do nowadays." The casualness, the utter dismissal of my financial reality, made something snap inside me. Years of always being the responsible one, of watching Stephanie receive endless second chances while I worked twice as hard for half the recognition, it all culminated in this moment. "Or," I said, my voice steady despite the raw anger and deep hurt swirling inside me, "I could just move out." There was a beat of stunned silence. Then all three of them burst into laughter. Loud, dismissive, mocking laughter. "Move out to where?" my mother asked, chuckling. "Do you have any idea what rental prices are like right now? You wouldn't find anything close to what you have here, even at the increased rate," my father added, utterly confident. "Your whole life is here," Stephanie chimed in, almost amused. "All your stuff, your routine. You wouldn't really leave." Their laughter felt like a physical slap across my face. They truly believed I was trapped, that I had no choice but to accept whatever terms they dictated. Even worse, they thought I lacked the courage to strike out on my own. "I'll start looking for a new place tomorrow," I said quietly. My father waved his hand dismissively. "Allison, don't be dramatic. Just sign the new agreement, and we can all enjoy this lovely dinner your mother made." I took the pen he offered, held it over the paper for a long charged moment. Then I set it down and signed. "I'll let you know my decision by the end of the week," I said. The rest of dinner was excruciating. An uncomfortable conversation mostly between my parents and Stephanie about her vague plans to find herself and explore new career paths. I remained silent, a storm of emotions and thoughts churning within me. After they left, Stephanie tried to act as if nothing had happened, turning on the TV, settling into her usual spot on my sofa. "They're right, you know," she said casually, not even looking at me. "You wouldn't really move out. This place is too perfect, and you hate change." In that moment, looking at her lounging on my furniture, using my Netflix, eating my food, and speaking with such entitled certainty, something inside me crystallized. This wasn't just about the rent increase. This was about respect. About boundaries. About finally standing up for myself in a family dynamic that had been broken for far too long. I went to bed without responding, but I lay awake for hours, my mind racing with possibilities, with plans. By morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. The very next day, I called in sick to work, for the first time in over a year. As soon as Stephanie left for her daily networking coffee shop visit, which was really just hours of social media scrolling, I sat down at my dining table with my laptop and a notebook. First, I did a ruthless assessment of my financial situation. 3 years of saving 20% of my income had built a substantial emergency fund enough to cover first and last month's rent, security deposit, and moving expenses. I calculated my maximum affordable rent based on the standard 30% guideline. The number was sobering, significantly less than what I currently paid, even before the proposed increase. It meant compromises on location, size, or amenities. Next, I contacted 3 real estate agents specializing in rentals. I was brutally honest about my budget and my timeline. I needed to move within 2 weeks. 2 agents were doubtful but promised to try. The third, a woman named Vanessa, was surprisingly optimistic. "The market's tight but not impossible," she assured me, "especially if you're willing to consider neighborhoods a bit further from downtown or slightly smaller spaces." While waiting for listings, I turned my attention to my current lease agreement. I pulled the document from my filing cabinet and read it carefully, something I admittedly should have done more thoroughly before signing. To my utter surprise and immense relief, there was no minimum lease term specified. After the initial 1 year, which had long passed, I was on a month-to-month arrangement, requiring a standard 30-day notice to vacate. Even more importantly, there was no clause about the furniture. Everything I had purchased over the years was legally mine. From the sofa to the refrigerator. My parents had only provided the basic built-in appliances. Still, I wanted to be absolutely certain. I texted Laura, whose brother was a real estate attorney. "Can you ask Kyle a hypothetical legal question about tenant rights and furniture ownership?" Laura called me back 20 minutes later. "Kyle says unless specifically stated in the lease, any furniture you purchase belongs to you, regardless of who owns the building. And if your parents try to claim otherwise without documentation, they won't have a case." Armed with this knowledge, I felt a surge of confidence. By the end of the day, Vanessa had sent me 5 potential apartment listings. All were smaller, none had the same charm, but they were within my budget and immediately available. The next day, I took another personal day and toured all 5. The first 3 were non-starters, poor condition, terrible commutes. The 4th had potential but was at the absolute top of my budget. The 5th, though the smallest at just 500 square feet, had been recently renovated with new flooring and appliances. It was in a secure building with on-site laundry, and while 15 minutes further from the office, it was on a direct bus line. Most importantly, the landlord was willing to work with my tight timeline, and even offered a slight discount on the security deposit if I could move in within 10 days. I signed the lease on the spot. Credit card deposit, final walkthrough scheduled. As I left the building, I felt this strange, electrifying mix of anxiety and exhilaration. I had just committed to a complete upheaval of my life in just 48 hours. Back in my soon-to-be former apartment, I meticulously planned the logistics. I created a detailed inventory, sorting items into must-take, could sell, could donate. I researched moving companies, but the quotes for such short notice were outrageous. Nearly $1,000 for even the smallest truck. That evening, as Stephanie chirped away on the phone about an upcoming party, completely oblivious to the silent revolution unfolding around her, I reached out to my friends. Within hours, I'd assembled a volunteer moving crew. 6 incredible people, 2 pickup trucks, and an SUV. Laura offered her garage for temporary storage, and her boyfriend, Marcus, a contractor, volunteered to help disassemble and reassemble furniture. The final crucial piece of my plan was timing. A quick check of my parents' social media confirmed my suspicions. My mom was posting excitedly about an upcoming family reunion at Aunt Jean's, a 3-hour drive away. They'd been talking about it for months, and I'd already politely declined, citing work. Stephanie, always eager for family attention, had confirmed her attendance. Perfect. My parents and Stephanie would be gone from Friday evening until Sunday afternoon. I scheduled the move for Saturday, giving us a full uninterrupted day to clear out everything I owned. As the plan came together, a deep sense of resolve hardened within me. This wasn't just about escaping an unfair financial situation anymore. This was about finally standing up for myself. It was about fundamentally changing a family dynamic that had been unhealthy for far too long. The night before my parents' planned ultimatum meeting, where they expected me to meekly sign the new rental agreement, I texted my father. "I've made my decision about the apartment. I will discuss it with you when you return from Aunt Jean's on Sunday." He responded immediately. "We need to resolve this before the weekend, Allison. Your mother and I expect you to be reasonable about this." I didn't reply. For once, I wasn't going to follow their script. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of silent preparations. I arranged mail forwarding, scheduled utility transfers, and packed essential items discreetly while Stephanie was out. I withdrew cash for last-minute expenses, silently thanking my past self for meticulously keeping receipts for all major purchases, stored securely in a cloud drive. By Friday evening, as I watched Stephanie pack an overnight bag for the reunion, an odd sense of calm settled over me. She had no idea that when she returned, the apartment would be transformed, and with it, our relationship. "Are you sure you won't come?" she asked as she headed out the door. "Mom says Aunt Jean really wants to see you." "I have too much work to catch up on," I replied truthfully, though not for the reasons she assumed. "Have a good time." As her rideshare pulled away, I looked around the apartment that had been my home for 5 years. By this time tomorrow it would look very, very different. And so would my life. Saturday morning dawned clear and bright, almost as if the universe itself was approving of my decision. I'd barely slept, a potent cocktail of anxiety and adrenaline keeping me wired through the night. By 6 a.m., I was already sorting through the final items in my closet when my phone buzzed. A text from Laura. "Operation Independence Day is a go. Troops arriving at 0800 hours. I actually smiled, a genuine, relieved smile at her attempt to lighten the mood with military jargon. By 7:30, I dismantled my bed frame and was working on emptying my dresser when the first knock came. Laura arrived with coffee and bagels, followed closely by her boyfriend, Marcus, with his toolkit. Within the hour, my entire volunteer crew had assembled. "Okay, everyone," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the raw emotion threatening to overwhelm me. "Thank you all so much for helping today. The plan is to have everything out by 4 p.m. Big furniture first, then boxes, then all the small loose items." We worked with surprising, almost military efficiency. Marcus and his friend took charge of disassembling the larger furniture. Laura and 2 others formed a box brigade, shuttling items from the apartment to the waiting vehicles. I moved between groups, directing traffic, making quick decisions about what went where. By noon, my bedroom was completely empty. The kitchen was half-packed, and the living room furniture was ready for transport. We broke for a quick lunch of delivered sandwiches, everyone sitting on the floor in a circle since all the seating was gone. "How are you feeling?" Laura asked quietly while the others chatted. I considered the question, the swirl of emotions inside me. Sad, angry, relieved, proud. All of it all at once. She squeezed my hand. "You're doing the right thing. This is long overdue." The afternoon continued at the same frantic pace. We made 3 trips to my new apartment, carefully arranging furniture and stacking boxes in the much smaller space. My new landlord seemed genuinely surprised by our efficiency. "Most move-ins I see are complete chaos," he commented, helping us hold a door open. "You folks have a system." By 3:30 we were down to the final items. The apartment that had once been so carefully, lovingly furnished now stood eerily, utterly empty. Only the built-in appliances remained, along with the window blinds. Everything else, from the shower curtain to the light bulbs to the lamps, was mine, and it was packed away. I did a final walkthrough, a last check for forgotten items. In the kitchen on the counter I left an envelope. Inside, my keys, the next month's rent check as required by my 30-day notice, and a brief, factual, unemotional letter explaining my decision to terminate the rental agreement and that I had taken only my own possessions. As I stood in the empty living room for the very last time, Laura put her arm around my shoulders. "Ready?" she asked gently. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. With one final lingering look, I closed and locked the door behind me. And just like that, it was over. The reaction came sooner than I expected. We had just finished the final trip to my new apartment, and were celebrating with pizza and beer when my phone exploded with notifications. First, a flurry of texts from Stephanie. "What the hell, Allison? Where is all the furniture? Where am I supposed to sleep? Mom and Dad are furious." Then came the phone calls. My mother first, then my father, then my mother again. I let them all go to voicemail, needing a moment, needing to compose myself before the inevitable confrontation. When I finally listened, my mother's voice was nearly hysterical. "Allison, what have you done? We came home to find the apartment completely empty. Is this some kind of joke? Call me immediately." My father's message was colder, far more threatening. "This is completely unacceptable behavior, Allison. That furniture belongs in that apartment. You have violated your lease agreement. Call me back now before I have to take legal action." I waited until my friends had left, thanking them profusely, before I finally called my father back. His voice was tight, barely controlled anger simmering beneath the surface. "Explain yourself," he demanded, no preamble. I took a deep breath, centering myself. "I decided to move out, as I told you I might. I gave proper notice as required by the lease, paid the final month's rent, and took my belongings with me." "Your belongings?" he sputtered. "That furniture belongs in the apartment." "Actually, no," I replied, my voice shockingly calm. "Every piece of furniture in that apartment was purchased by me, with my own money. I have receipts for everything if you'd like to see them. The lease makes no mention of any furnishings provided by the landlord, which would be you and Mom." There was a moment of stunned silence before he recovered. "This isn't about legalities, Allison. This is about your sister having nowhere to sleep tonight. The apartment is completely empty. There are air mattresses at Target for under $50, I suggested. Or she could stay at your house. The guest room renovations must be finished by now, right?" Another silence. Longer this time. And then a sudden, blinding clarity. There probably had never been any renovations. That had been an excuse. Nothing more. "Where are you?" he finally asked, his voice strained. "I have a new apartment," I said, not volunteering the address. "It's smaller, but it's mine." "This is not over," he warned. "Your mother is beside herself. Stephanie is crying. Is that what you wanted? To hurt your family? The guilt trip?" It almost worked. Almost. But I held firm. "What I wanted was to be treated with respect," I replied evenly. "What I wanted was for my boundaries to be acknowledged." What I wanted was to not have my kindness taken for granted. So this is revenge? Some kind of childish tantrum because we asked you to help your sister? No, Dad. This is me making a choice about my own life. I paid rent for the final 30 days as required. Stephanie can stay there if she wants, but she'll need to get her own furniture. I heard my mother's voice in the background demanding the phone. There was a rustling sound, and then her tear-filled voice came through. How could you do this to your sister, to us? After everything we've done for you? Mom, I said gently but with steel in my voice. I have done nothing wrong. I simply moved out of an apartment that was no longer working for me, taking my own possessions. But where is Stephanie supposed to sleep? There's nothing left. The same place she would have slept if I had never lived there in the first place. The apartment was unfurnished when I moved in. Remember? That simple fact seemed to stop her short. There was a long pause before she spoke again, her voice different now. You really moved everything out in one day? Yes. And you have a new place already? You planned all this? Yes. Another pause. I never thought you would actually leave. There was something in her tone. Not quite respect, but perhaps the beginnings of it. A recognition that I wasn't the same pushover they had always assumed me to be. The conversation ended shortly after, with vague threats about discussions to come and decisions to be made. I hung up, feeling completely drained but strangely profoundly peaceful. For the first time in my adult life I had drawn a line. And I had held it. Despite the emotional manipulation and guilt trips that had always worked in the past. Later that evening, I received a surprising text from my father. The apartment looks different. Empty. I had forgotten what it looked like before you moved in. We will talk more tomorrow. It wasn't an apology, not even close. But it was an acknowledgement. And for now that was enough. In the weeks that followed my dramatic departure, I truly started to adjust to life in my new apartment. The space was much smaller, forcing creative organization and some really tough decisions about what to keep. My king-sized bed practically dominated the bedroom, leaving barely enough room to walk around it. My beloved sectional sofa had to be split into its component pieces just to fit the living area. My dining table now served double duty as a desk and an eating surface. Yet, despite these physical constraints, there was a lightness to my new home that had nothing to do with square footage. For the first time in years, maybe ever, I felt truly in control of my space and my life. Every object was exactly where I wanted it. Every decision, from doing laundry to setting the thermostat, was mine alone. The peace that came with this autonomy was worth far more than any extra space I had left behind. I actually introduced myself to my neighbors, something I'd never bothered with in my old building. To my delight, the woman across the hall was a graphic designer who also worked from home, and she invited me for coffee on our shared rooftop garden. The older gentleman next door offered to water my plants when I traveled. Gradually, I built a small, genuine community in my new building, forming connections that felt supportive and real. Meanwhile, the situation with my family began to evolve in truly unexpected ways. Stephanie, faced with an empty apartment and no one to cater to her every whim, was forced to make changes. According to my mother's reluctant updates, she'd taken a part-time job at a local boutique, similar to her previous one. It wasn't much, but it was a start towards her own financial independence. My parents, after the initial shock and anger subsided, seemed to be going through a period of deep reflection. My father, especially, appeared to be reconsidering his role in enabling Stephanie's dependence. During a brief phone call 2 weeks after I moved, he asked questions about my new place without the usual judgment. "Are you managing okay with the budget?" he inquired, his tone carefully neutral. "Yes," I replied honestly. "It's tighter than before, but I'm making it work. The location is actually better for my commute, which saves on transportation costs." "That's good," he said, a little awkwardly. "Your mother and I have been talking about Stephanie, about some patterns we might have encouraged over the years." It was as close to an acknowledgement of their favoritism as I had ever heard. And while it wasn't an apology, it felt like undeniable progress. My relationship with my mother, however, remained strained. She continued to see my actions as a betrayal of family loyalty, rather than a necessary step towards healthy boundaries. Our conversations were short and superficial, focusing on weather and work, never the enormous emotional elephant in the room. Stephanie, surprisingly, was the first to reach out in a truly meaningful way. A month after my departure, she texted, asking if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, curious but absolutely determined to maintain my boundaries. We met at a neutral cafe halfway between our new homes. She looked different somehow. Less makeup, simpler clothes than her usual stylish outfits. "So," she said after we ordered our drinks, "your new place is good?" "It is," I confirmed. "Different but good." She nodded, fidgeting with her napkin. "I didn't think you would really leave. None of us did." She looked up, a small, almost shy smile playing on her lips. "I know, it was kind of badass actually. The look on Dad's face when we walked into that empty apartment. I wish I'd taken a picture." Despite myself, I laughed. "It wasn't about revenge, you know." "I know that now," she admitted, looking down at her coffee. "I've been thinking a lot about this whole thing. About how I've always expected people to take care of me. How I never really had to face consequences because someone always bailed me out. When you left, it was like suddenly I had to figure things out. Mom and Dad brought over an air mattress, but it was so uncomfortable and I hated it. So I got a job to buy my own bed. And once I started working again, I realized I actually like having my own money, not having to ask for everything." "That's great, Steph," I said, genuinely pleased for her. "I'm still staying at the apartment," she added quickly, "but I'm paying rent now. Not much, but something. And I'm looking for a roommate situation for when the lease ends." We talked for nearly 2 hours, longer than we had spoken in years. For the first time, it felt like a conversation between equals, rather than the familiar dynamic of her taking and me giving. As we parted, she hugged me awkwardly. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for being such a terrible sister." "You weren't terrible," I corrected her, squeezing back. "We just had unhealthy patterns. All of us." The healing process with my family continued slowly over the following months. There were setbacks, of course, difficult conversations, moments when old patterns threatened to reassert themselves. My mother still occasionally tried to make me feel guilty for abandoning Stephanie. My father sometimes slipped into his authoritative role, dispensing unwanted advice about my finances or career. But something fundamental had changed. They could no longer assume my compliance or take my support for granted. Each interaction now required mutual respect, or it simply didn't happen. I declined invitations that felt like obligations, and accepted only those that felt genuinely reciprocal. I offered help when I could do so without resentment, and said no when I couldn't. 6 months after my move, we gathered for Thanksgiving at my parents' house. The atmosphere was different, tentative, but not unpleasant. Stephanie brought a dessert she'd baked herself. I brought a bottle of wine I could genuinely afford. My father carved the turkey with less ceremony than usual, and my mother asked about my new neighbors with what seemed like genuine interest. As we ate, I looked around the table at these people who had shaped me in both positive and negative ways. I felt neither the burning resentment that had driven me away, nor the desperate need for approval that had kept me compliant for so long. Instead, I felt a calm acceptance, a recognition that we were all flawed individuals, doing our best with the emotional tools we had. The greatest, most profound lesson I learned through this entire, painful experience wasn't just about furniture or apartments or even money. It was about the crucial difference between love and enabling, between true generosity and being relentlessly taken advantage of. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do both for yourself and for others is to set clear boundaries and then hold them firm, even when it's excruciating. I also discovered the immense value of true independence, not just financial, but emotional. The raw security of knowing I could stand on my own 2 feet, make difficult decisions and navigate their consequences, gave me a confidence that permeated every single aspect of my life. My work improved. My friendships deepened. My sense of self strengthened, becoming unshakable. Today, 1 year after that dramatic moving day, I sit here in my small but deeply cherished apartment. It's filled with the same furniture that once occupied a much larger space, but now it feels perfectly right for where I am. I've added new pieces chosen specifically for this home, and lovingly let go of others that no longer served me. In so many ways, that's what this whole experience taught me about life. We often cling to relationships, patterns, and expectations that once fit, but gradually become uncomfortable, even constricting. Having the courage to truly assess what serves us, to keep what nurtures our growth, and to bravely release what restricts, that is perhaps the most important skill we can ever develop. If you've ever found yourself in a situation where your kindness was mistaken for weakness, where your boundaries were repeatedly crossed, or where you felt utterly trapped by others' expectations, know this: you have the right and the incredible power to change that dynamic. It may not be easy. It certainly won't happen overnight. But taking that first brave step toward honoring your own needs can transform not just your life, but the lives of those around you, in ways you might never ever expect.